Okay, well, great. Welcome, everybody. This is Emiliano Conde. I'm the president of jBilling. I'm very excited to have such a large audience today looking at what we've done as far as integration with CRM goes. I posted a blog that you can find on jbilling.com. You click on blog. I wrote how is it that we got to this point and what's the value that I see having CRM and billing integrated. Over the years, and it's been about almost 10 years that jBilling is around, we constantly heard the call for integration between CRM and jBilling. But that's not that easy to do, and there's so many CRM systems out there. I think that over the years, there's these two CRMs, Salesforce and Sugar, really took the lead as far as small and medium companies and even some large companies as well using them. And they provided a very interesting platform that is extensible and is relatively easy to integrate with other systems. So we got to a good point in the market and in the technology landscapes where we can actually offer an integration with these two systems that is easy to install, that is affordable, and that respects our commitment to open source. If those that get these integrations will get the source code as well, and again we maintain our vision of starting with a very solid framework. In this case, the integration, for example, for SugarCRM. It's a good start that it is meant to be extended. It is meant to be adapted to your business rules. It is meant to be like a glove that fits how you're using the CRM and how you're using the billing system. So thank you very much for joining. I will let now Crystal show you interesting things instead of you guys hearing me talking. That's going to be much more fun to listen to Crystal.
Great. Thanks, Emiliano. So as I've mentioned, I am recording this session. You are all on mute just to sort of give me the ease of not talking over anyone's, if you're having communications outside of this webinar. So if you do have a question, there'll be a period at the end where you can ask questions. I can unmute you at that point, or just raise a hand or type a message into the chat window, and I will be more than happy to answer your questions. So to start this presentation, we are going to start with jBilling and Salesforce. So we're going to talk about the jBilling Salesforce integration, and then we're going to move on to talk about the jBilling and SugarCRM integration. The goals of this presentation is to use jBilling's out-of-the-box functionality to demonstrate the integration of Salesforce. So other than creating a plugin to ensure that Salesforce or even Sugar as well, work together, we're not doing anything new with jBilling. It's still the same functionality that you know and love. Secondly, we want to give you a better understanding of how jBilling has been integrated with Salesforce. That the same goes for SugarCRM. And finally, to provide you with the opportunity to ask questions that you might have. We're going to start with an overview of some features. So overall, what we have done is we've taken Salesforce and we're utilizing Salesforce for the account and sales management functionality. And we've taken jBilling, and we're using jBilling, of course, for the billing and payments functionality. And what we've done is we've created what we call the jBilling Salesforce Connector, and they work together in order to achieve your billing needs. So for example, Salesforce, we get our pricing and quotes from Salesforce, and from jBilling we get our orders and renewals. So together both systems work together, and we utilize the best functionalities from both systems. In addition, Salesforce handles our leads, opportunities, accounts, and contacts and support cases, while jBilling utilizes the product catalog, subscriptions, amendments, invoices, payments, usage, and taxations. So through this demonstration, you're going to see how, primarily through the API and making API calls, we can do many things in Salesforce utilizing jBilling's functionality to have a front-end CRM and a back-end billing. What I mean by that is ideally we want our Salesforce administrators, so these are your salespeople, your account admins, and so on, will use Salesforce to generate the billing and to be able to see at all times where that customer is at in the billing cycle or in the billing process. What we're going to be going over in this presentation for Salesforce is I'm going to create a customer account in Salesforce. When I create a customer account in Salesforce, you're going to see it update in jBilling. We're then going to create a customer quote, talk about printing that quote and purchasing the quote, creating subscriptions without a quote. We're then going to view customer orders, invoices, payments, and refunds. We're going to talk about how you can email or print that customer's invoice. We're then going to show you how you can update payment information for the customer, initiate payment of outstanding invoices, refund a payment, and suspend or activate a customer's account. So the idea is that I'm going to be showing you all of these items from the perspective of using Salesforce. There will be a few instances where I do use jBilling because, again, jBilling is a billing system. So when we create an invoice, for example, that's all jBilling's work. That's not Salesforce or SugarCRM. So let's start with creating a customer in Salesforce to view the account in jBilling. So basically, they're linked to each other. Once you create the account in Salesforce, that same information is going to appear in jBilling. Now, I just want to make a note that it is possible to sort of do vice versa, where if you create an account in jBilling, it also is going to be updated in Salesforce. But again, we want to focus on using Salesforce because this is, the most ideal situation is that your system administrators will be using Salesforce to update jBilling. So here we have Salesforce, and I want to create a new account. So I'm going to do that now. This is the jBilling instance that we will be using. So I'm just going to log into this instance. And I just want to show you the Customers tab here. So we have a few customers who've been created already from Salesforce. But I'm going to create a customer called Sarah Wilson. So currently we don't have any customer named Sarah Wilson. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to create an account for her. Now, as we go through Salesforce, you're going to notice that we have different fields here that pertain to jBilling. So they're fields that we've, put into Salesforce to match jBilling. And those fields are important. Things like sub-accounts, invoice of child, use parent pricing, who is the parent account, do we want to use sub-accounts. That information or those fields have all been taken from jBilling. We also have currency if you want to select it, status, which we're going to go over a little later on. But ultimately, we've extended Salesforce to capture the fields that are important in jBilling. Okay, so let's fill in some fields. We're just going to keep this customer as a regular simple customer. I'm going to give her some address information. And as we scroll down, you can see we have additional information here, credit card and ACH. We can store that from Salesforce into jBilling as well. Now, at this point, we have two options, one of which is to just create the account in Salesforce. At that point, you could then create a quote for the customer, the customer could approve that quote and so on. The other option is to immediately create that account in jBilling. And so we can do that by selecting this checkbox. So basically this checkbox defines whether this account will be visible in jBilling or not, or when do we want to create this account in jBilling. So, this functionality covers both options, where if you just want to create the account, you're not sure if they're going to subscribe to your services, but you want them in the system, you want to create a quote. Or right away you can say, okay, this customer is going to be an official customer of our company, so I want to create this account in jBilling. I'm going to save my changes, and that's a good point. We always need an email address. The reason being that in jBilling the email address is a mandatory field. So therefore in Salesforce it's going to be a mandatory field as well. Again, because it's linked to our notifications and we want to be able to send notifications to our customers. We're saving this account. Perfect. We have a Salesforce account now, and for those of you who are familiar with Salesforce, you'll notice that there are familiar fields, and then there's areas of the system that have been added. But before we start talking about those different areas of Salesforce, let's refresh jBilling to see that our customer, Sarah Wilson, has been created automatically in jBilling in real time. So we have the same address information I created for her. We have the credit card information. But other than that, we don't have anything for Sarah because we haven't actually gone ahead and created a quote and so on. So we have a fresh customer in jBilling. That brings us to our next point, which is creating customer quotes using products and pricing received in real time from jBilling. Salesforce gives you the ability to create quotes. So this is another benefit of having the integration between Salesforce and jBilling, or a CRM and jBilling. The idea is that once you create the quote and the customer approves it, that quote then becomes a subscription for the customer in jBilling. There are 3 types of quotes available. We have a quote for a new subscription. So let's say that a salesperson creates a quote for recurring or one-time charges based on the current jBilling product catalog. So this brings me to my next point. When you are creating a quote, as stated in this header here, the Salesforce uses all products that are created in jBilling, retrieves them in real time so that the salesperson or whoever is able to create that quote with products that are actually active in jBilling. So we can create a quote for a new subscription, as I mentioned. We can create a quote, or we can sort of edit a quote to change the existing subscription. So we're changing pricing, products, or terms. So let's say that the salesperson creates a quote and we want to revise the existing order, change products or pricing. So we're changing something for the customer that they then need to approve again. And the third way is to renew an existing subscription. So we're changing the terms of that subscription only, not the prices or products. So let's go into jBilling now, and the type of quote that we're going to create is a quote for new subscription. Sorry, I said let's go into jBilling. I meant Salesforce. So at the very bottom of the customer's account in Salesforce, we have jBilling quotes. And simply, we just have to click on this new jBilling quotes button. We will be redirected to be able to create a quote. So we have 2 subscription options. We have a quote for new subscription or quote for existing subscription. We want for a new subscription, so we're going to click on that link. And we're going to be able to create a quote now for our customer. Now this screen actually looks basically the same as if we were to just create a regular subscription for the customer. So from here we can select the period. So how often are we billing the customers for, or will we be billing the customers for this subscription? Prepaid or postpaid? Is there an active until date on this subscription? Are we prorating this subscription? And so on. So we can also indicate when the quote is valid until. So this is really the only difference between a quote and creating a subscription in Salesforce. We get to indicate when the quote is valid until, as well as the quote terms. Salesforce enables you to upload quote terms, and basically it's just a template for what your quote is going to look like. So once we create a quote, I'm going to show you an example of what that would look like, and it's based off of the quote terms that we've added into Salesforce as well. Here we have our categories. These are all the categories that we can find in jBilling. So if I go into the product screen, you'll see here we have recurring charges, taxes, service charges, recurring charges, taxes, and service charges, and so on. So again, we're getting our product information in real time from jBilling. So I've selected my category. I now need to add some products. So let's say I just want to add some call center seats. So this customer we're creating a quote for them. Every month they're going to be charged for 10 call center seats. So this is still just a quote again. What we can do from this quote screen is we can change the price of the product to be a custom price. We can also add a discount percentage. So this really gives us a lot of flexibility in terms of how we price or rate our products, even from jBilling, because jBilling is super flexible in terms of how we can rate and price our products. But Salesforce gives us the added ability of actually creating a custom price or a discount on top of that. I'm going to go ahead and save this quote. And at this point, we have a couple of different options. So this brings us to scenario 3, where our customer has a quote. At this point, we can print the quote. So we can print it and send it to the customer so that they can approve the quote, and with the idea being that they then become an official subscriber. We can purchase the quote. So once the customer says, yes, this quote looks fantastic, I want to go ahead, you can complete the quote purchase, and once you click on that button, that's when jBilling comes into play again. You've created an official purchase, so an official subscription, which updates jBilling immediately with a purchase order with the same details as the quote. So then the customer is ready to be billed. You then, of course, have the options to also edit and delete the quote. What we're going to do right now is we're going to purchase the quote. So we're going to complete the purchase. So before we do that, actually, I do want to show you printing a quote. So I've just clicked on the print quote button, and this is what our sample quote looks like. So by selecting those terms that we've created, we're basically indicating the template for the quote that we're sending to the customer. You can configure that from Salesforce in any way you want. Now we're going to complete the purchase. Excuse me. So when you select this button, it's going to ask you, do you want to create an active order? What it's basically asking you, do you want to create an order in jBilling so that we can then invoice the customer for these services? Yes, we do. So we click OK. And as that's refreshing, I'm going to go to our customer here, and now you can see we have an order for the customer. So let's go to the order screen. Take a look. Sarah Wilson has an order, and the details are exactly the same. They match the exact details that we had in our quote. We had call center seats. We had 10 of them at $50 per seat for a total. If we go back into Salesforce and I go take a look at that customer's account, so we're going back to Sarah's account in Salesforce. And I'm going to scroll down here. So the changes that we're going to see in Salesforce is that our jBilling quotes, the status has changed to purchased, and we now have information in our jBilling orders. And again, it's going to match what we have in jBilling. So order 2401, in jBilling we have order 2401. So it's an exact match of what you've created in Salesforce. In addition to this, as I've mentioned, you can create a subscription without a quote. So in Salesforce, you can create an actual subscription skipping the quote stage, and the process is exactly the same as a quote, except you don't have the quote terms or the quote sort of valid until date. Those are the only two things that are different from that screen. So in Salesforce, we have the order section. We would click on the new order button, create a new order for the customer, save it, and again, it would be updated in jBilling. Now, this is where jBilling takes over, because jBilling owns the generation of invoices. So let's say that we have a billing run that's done on today's date. I'm going to run billing. Let's just check our billing to make sure that we have the correct invoices generated. We do. Here's Sarah Wilson. So I'm going to go ahead and approve this report so that I can generate an official billing run, because we want to see what happens in Salesforce now. So we have an official billing run for today's date. Let's go back to Salesforce and we'll refresh Sarah's screen here. So let's see what's happened. First of all, we have an invoice. So the invoice is generated in jBilling, as we can see if we go to the invoices pane here. We have an invoice, but because we've added her credit card information and we have a payment gateway set up, we also get a payment. Her invoice is automatically paid. So invoice ID here, 211, that's our invoice number, and it matches exactly what Sarah's invoice is in jBilling. We can even select the link to look at that in more detail. And we also have the payment. So payment 2304, payment 2304. We have the payment information here in jBilling, and we also have the payment information in Salesforce. So we know that the payment was successful, the payment amount, how many payment attempts. Again, that's all retrieved from jBilling. So at this point, you have the ability to review your customers' orders, invoices, and payments or refunds. That's what Salesforce allows you to do. So because of this integration, we have jBilling still doing what it does, generating those invoices, but Salesforce is updated so at any time you can always see where that customer is at in the billing cycle or the relationship with their billing to your company. Now, once we have our invoices, we do have the option to email or print a customer's invoice. So if we go back into Salesforce here and I click on that invoice, the screen will refresh, and here we have the email, invoice, or print invoice buttons. The email invoice, what this allows us to do from Salesforce is to email the invoice to anyone who needs it. So here we have the invoice for S. Wilson, but let's say I'm going to send it to myself so that I can show you an example. So we have a subject line here and a text line, and let's send that invoice. So I should receive that email shortly. But again, you can also print the customer's invoice and mail it to them via, regular mail. So let's see. And here's just quickly my invoice, or my email invoice generated. Thank you for your business. And I can actually download the PDF of that invoice directly from the email as well. Okay, so moving right along here, we can now do several different things. We have the ability to update credit card or ACH payment information for the customer at any time. And we can do that from Salesforce. So if we edit her account and we want to change her credit card information, we can go ahead and do that. Let's say that it's expired, so we need to update the date. We can go ahead and do that, save our changes, and we've successfully updated Sarah's account information. We can also initiate payment of outstanding invoices. So if Sarah has an invoice that is unpaid, we can initiate a payment. Alternatively, we can also refund a payment. So we already have a payment here for Sarah, and I don't want to go into jBilling to do any refunds. So I'm going to click on the payment that's been made. And here you can see, because the invoice was paid in full, we have the option to refund payment. So I'm going to select this refund payment. And I'm going to give a full refund to the customer. So we have the total amount that was paid, refund our payment. It's successful, so let's go back to our customer's account. And we should see from our customer's account that we have an additional payment line. It's now a refund instead of a payment. That's what the R stands for. And if we go into jBilling and I go to our payments section, we should also see that refund made to that customer as well. So ID 2305, ID 2305. The one last item that I want to show you for Salesforce, and in addition to that, I will show you making a payment from SugarCRM, and the idea is basically the same. But for Salesforce, I'm just going to edit this customer one last time. I can change the account status for this customer through Salesforce, and it will also update jBilling. So if I want to suspend this customer's account, let's say they're not paying their invoices, or they don't want to start their services yet, whatever the reason may be, I can change the status of the customer, save that, and with the status change in Salesforce comes the status change of our customer in jBilling. So we should see that the status of the account has changed to suspended as well. So if I wanted to change that back to active, I could go ahead and do that. It would also update in jBilling again as well. So that is the presentation on Salesforce. So I'm just checking to see if there's any questions. None so far. So let's move into talking about SugarCRM. And SugarCRM is, quite honestly, pretty much the same things that I've just shown you. First of all, I'm just going to close my Salesforce and move over my Sugar so I don't get mixed up. So we have the same thing in this example. The only difference is here we have SugarCRM instead of Salesforce. So again, SugarCRM is taking care of the account and sales management portion, while jBilling is taking care of the billing, so generating those invoices, making those payments. We now are talking about the jBilling SugarCRM Connector. So to be quite honest, the flow is exactly the same. So I will be going over the same details that I went over with Salesforce. So we have the same overview. We have, I'm going to create a customer in SugarCRM. I'm going to create a quote, print quote, purchase quote. I can also create a subscription without a quote, view customer invoices, orders, so on, email or print customer invoice, update payment information, initiate payment of outstanding invoice, refund payment, or suspend or activate the customer account. So we're going through the same exact flow that we did for Salesforce. Now, one of the differences between Salesforce and SugarCRM is that when I save an account, I don't have to save it with credit card information. So let's create an account in Salesforce. And again, just as a reminder, we're creating a customer in SugarCRM, and we're going to be able to view that account in jBilling. If we wanted to create the account in jBilling, SugarCRM would also be updated. But again, ideally, we're trying to keep the flow from Sugar to jBilling as much as possible. So let's go ahead and create Sarah Wilson again. And information just, it's the same essentially, but it's just presented differently, of course. Oops. And just bear with me as I fill in these fields. So we can copy the address on the left. Again, we need an email address. And again, we have the option to create a jBilling login account. So I want to do that. However, this time I'm not going to add payment information because I want to show you how we can make payments from Salesforce to jBilling. So I'm just going to fill in the rest of this information here. And I'm just going to check. So before I save, I'm going to log into jBilling here and go to the customer screen. So there's no Sarah Wilson currently, or at least the Sarah Wilson that I'm creating now. I'm going to go ahead and save this. And once it's saved, we're going to see the same thing happen in Sugar as it did in Salesforce. We get an account with many different sort of areas that have been integrated with jBilling. We have the quote section, orders, invoices, and payments here. Let's go to jBilling, and I'm just going to click on the customer screen again, and here we have our wonderful Sarah Wilson has been created in jBilling from SugarCRM. Now, SugarCRM is a little bit different from Salesforce in that all actions take place from clicking on this area here. So I could go ahead and enter payment information for the customer. Again, I'm not going to do that because I want to show you an example of payments. But I am going to create a quote here. So again, this functionality doesn't really differ from jBilling or from Salesforce and SugarCRM. We still have those three options. We can create a quote for new subscription or existing subscription. We don't have anything for Sarah right now, so we're going to create a quote for new subscription. Let's call it monthly service. It's active from today's date. I'm not going to add an active until date. We can have the quote valid until. It's going to be a monthly order, prepaid. So this is very, very similar to what we saw from Salesforce. We can select our currency. And we also have our quote terms. So same sort of setup here. The products adding are a little bit different. It's in a drop-down menu. So these products, as you can see, are different from Salesforce. If we go into this instance of jBilling that's linked to Salesforce, to SugarCRM, we have the same products and categories. So again, we're still receiving the products from jBilling into SugarCRM in real time. So let's select a product. We'll just go for some lemonade. Let's say we purchase 10. Again, we have the ability to add a custom price, give a discount, and add or remove the products as are necessary. So let's go ahead and save this quote for our customer. Perfect. If we scroll down now in her account screen to the bottom, we see that we have that quote available there. So if we go back to our options that we have, we can then complete our purchase. So we can complete the purchase of our quote. And by completing the purchase of our quote, and we can even select which quotes we want to approve, purchase our quote, and once we purchase our quote, we should see that available to us in jBilling. There's a bit of a glitch there, but the quote is created, or the purchase order, I should say, is created in jBilling. So we can see that one was created. Let's take a look at that order. Sarah Wilson has the order, lemonade, quantity, and let's see our order details, our order number, 109221. If we go back in Sugar, back to Sarah Wilson's account, we then scroll down. Our quote status is purchased, and we now have an order under our orders tab here, and the order details match the details that are created in jBilling. We also have the ability to create an order without a quote, same as Salesforce. We can do that by, where are you? Purchase products. So purchase products will allow you to just create a regular purchase order without the customer having to approve that quote. So at this point, again, it's up to jBilling. We need jBilling to generate that invoice for us. So I'm going to quickly generate that invoice. And we want it from today's date. Save our changes. I'm just going to check to see if there's good. So I'm going to go ahead and run that billing to make sure we get an invoice for Sarah. This might take a little bit longer. Yes, this billing run will take a little bit longer. But the concept is the same, where we have, once we have that invoice generated for Sarah, it's going to appear in our invoices section in SugarCRM. Now, in this case, we're not going to get it automatically paid because there's no payment information associated with her account. I'm actually going to skip the billing process because it's taking a little bit too long for my liking. So what we're going to do, and that's just a product of, we have a lot of customers in here, I'm going to take that order and just manually generate it into an invoice. So I've manually triggered an invoice generation. It's unpaid. Let's refresh her account. And here we go. We have an invoice. And again, the invoice matches the invoice we have in jBilling. Now, we don't have a payment. So what we can do is create a payment. So I showed you an example of a refund. We first need to add the payment information that we want to associate with the customer. So I'm going to do that now. So I'm going to add, we can also edit the payment information. Visa, I'm just going to do credit card again. So we have Sarah Wilson here. Security code. Our number. And our expiry date. And I'm going to save that. Perfect. So now we have payment information. I can then go to that invoice and select it in Sugar. And I can pay that invoice. Now, with both SugarCRM and Salesforce, you can create partial payments. So you don't have to pay the whole invoice in full. Let's say the customer only wants to pay half. That's absolutely fine. Those options are available in Salesforce and SugarCRM because they are also available in jBilling. So we've made a payment At this point, we can refund the payment as we did in Salesforce. I can email the invoice to the customer. So those are my options with my payment. And if I go back to my customer, we should see that we have a payment for the customer. And it should match the payment that is then created for our customer in jBilling. So in this example, from SugarCRM, we created a payment, whereas Salesforce, jBilling created the payment. So it works both ways. The ultimate benefit being that both jBilling and Salesforce or SugarCRM are always kept updated with the information that's being passed back and forth between the two. Again, with a SugarCRM, we saw an example of a refund. SugarCRM can do the same thing. What we can also do is suspend the account, similar to what we did with Salesforce. We can suspend the account. It will be updated in jBilling. And when we activate the account again, it would be activated in jBilling.